So like I said, I'm Goran, currently Director of Engineering at SoundCloud. And sometimes I need to do like these really cringy introductions when I'm doing especially interviews with people who are kind of like starting their career and kind of need to stress out like, hey, I'm actually technical. Because like sometimes they could get confused what I actually am doing. And I'm just like pushing like tickets around. Actually, my background is distributed systems, big data processing, and these days I'm doing a lot of around service-oriented architecture. Being a backend engineer in the past, with like probably my kind of main technology or language of choice was Scala. So been working on various sizes of companies from startups, and somehow along the way I ended up in SoundCloud, first as engineering manager and now as a director of engineering. And usually, like after I say I'm technical, I kind of say you can go as deep as you want with me with like when I ask you questions. And right now I'm in charge of team delivery and my teammates' growth. I actually don't know like, is this cover like all the things I'm doing right now, but I hope it kind of gives a little bit of a picture of what I'm doing. What is this talk about? Well, this is mostly about my path, what I learned along the way, how I moved from senior engineering to engineering manager to director of engineering, what I learned, like what are the steps I took, and also like what other paths were there for me, but I didn't want those paths. Why, like what caused it? So more or less we'll kind of like discuss tonight. If I summarize it, like we'll go what's beyond senior engineering, like we'll touch base on like kind of like multiple paths you can take after that. We'll take a tutorial, discuss how basically to end up in leadership role. Hopefully some of my advices, kind of my learnings that I will share help you with that. Or maybe like after that you'll realize like how not to end up in the leadership role. That's also kind of like fine. I'll go with I'll go through like a frequently asked questions that people usually ask me. I'll go through some career ladders. At the end, like there's always time for Q&A, which kind of I'm really looking forward to. So how did I end up basically being engineering manager? Looking back. So for me, like the number one thing that I'm currently trying to say to people is like avoid surprising you're in charge now, because that's exactly what happened to me. And basically my manager at that time came and said, so I would like you to manage your current team. He recognized that I'm the most experienced in the team. I was kind of like leading the current project, trying to organize the work. And basically said, I would like actually that you become a people manager as well. People manager meaning I want you to do like reviews. I want you to make sure that they get vacation. I want to make sure that you're healthy. And he offered me in a way where I actually didn't have a lot of choice, to be honest. The offer was like, I had two offers on the table from him in that moment. Offer number one was, well, you take the role, you become a manager, you get your role, you get a salary bump, you get like everybody's like, you can update your LinkedIn, whatever. The other role, you do nothing, like you continue working as you're currently working, but when the review process comes, I'm going to ask you about your review of peers. And when like vacation comes time, I will ask you, can people take vacation? I thought like this is extremely unfair situation I'm in. And I was actually contemplating even about quitting, because it's really not like situation I really like imagine myself being in. But then I like slept over it, discussed with my teammates. I really like the team. I really like what we were doing. I really like what we were building. And then basically, I think my teammates at that moment kind of nudged me, kind of do it. Who knows who else might come inside of you. So I said, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? Let's do it. Well, the worst thing that can happen in my mind, I always had this ringing notion in my head, like a buzzing feeling, like not buzzing, like I knew this like for a long time, that there is a thing in companies that's called Peter's principle. And that thing scares the shit out of me, right? And Peter's principle says, in a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to the level of his incompetence. So think about it, like this is like means, this is basically a theory how incompetent people end up in high positions. They are extremely good at the job they're doing. They are valued at the position they do, but somewhere along the line, they get tipped and say like, hey, you should be taking a next step in your career. And on that level, they start basically being incompetent. they are not able to produce the value they were producing on a level before. And because in this organization, there is never a step back because that's a demotion, usually people stick at that level. So for me, that was a scary notion that I've been like a good engineer, or I believe so. People told me that, but I really didn't want to suck as a manager. And I also noticed like the choices I took along the way, which I'll kind of discuss during this talk, really didn't prepare me where I kind of landed. I was basically not prepping myself, or I didn't have a really career path that's kind of like driving to the position where I kind of landed. Which means like, if you're really not ready, I hope you have a great team that can support you in the beginning, because that's what I had. I have like, because I was working with my colleagues, they gave me a space that actually can like experiment and try out. A lot of people told me like, you should like, now it's your chance to whatever you hated in your managers to improve. But actually, I never actually even consider what I actually hate about my managers. I just try to kind of do the best for my team and for us and try to navigate the team in that really turbulent time. And along the way, I somehow found a foothold. But that get me like thinking since then, I started to think about career like an elevator. You like enter the elevator and either you kind of pick the floor where you want to land, or if you are like, you don't know where you want to go and you don't touch anything, somebody will call the elevator for you and you will end up on a floor that you didn't plan for. And maybe you end up on a floor that's really great, or maybe you end up on a floor where the floor is lava. So it's really like a matter of luck. And I started to think how I can actually adjust this thing and what actually can lead me to not depend on the luck so much, because I was lucky and ended up like actually liking being a manager. I'm kind of like the people growth part. I like being kind of like able to shape projects as they come along. I like doing things that are kind of like not fun for most of backend engineers. And I didn't know that I actually liked that until I kind of stepped in those shoes. Yeah. So basically, knowing where actually to go, usually we need to kind of like start discussing about what actually options there are, right? Usually organizations have two tracks, or at least they're trying to say it like that. So you can start as individual contributor, and then you in some moment in your career, you kind of like that's how you basically usually pitch this, like you either do a management or a staff engineer. And this usually means like, if you talk about LinkedIn titles, we're talking about senior engineer or I don't know, web engineer or whatever. And then like on the engineering part, it's either engineering manager, director of engineering, people manager. And staff engineers are usually principal engineers, software architects. They can vary on definitions. But why is like, I was really thinking like, why does this weight of this decision for most of the people, even for me, like sounded like blue pill and red pill? Like, why is it so hard to kind of decide where you want to go for most people? Because it's usually presented as a promotion, but actually it's not a promotion, it's a complete change of a profession. Because both roles are actually leadership roles, and the rules of being successful are completely different. Whatever kind of led you to the path that you're actually successful in a role of, let's say, backend engineer, or a role of a web engineer, or a role of data engineer, doesn't really translate that it will make you successful as a manager, or even like a principal engineer or a software architect. Like if you read a lot of interviews that like principal engineers, for instance, gave, like the number one thing that kind of like is like demystified is they believe that once they get the title, that actually they will get the power to execute things. And that's not really the truth. Like you don't, like somebody putting you in that spot doesn't mean that you immediately be a successful. And even worse, that you will be able to execute your ideas. So that's why like I think everything after like a senior engineering part enters a different waters, and for those it needs a different skill set. But it's even like it even becomes super blurry when it's presented as a next step in your career ladder. That's usually how it's presented. You go like, that's kind of like a path. And I remember when I was starting a career, everybody was not asking, where are the senior engineers? Where are the senior engineers? And everybody thought like, oh, they became managers or architects, whatever. That's because they only saw that as kind of possible options. And that's really, really, I think, interesting and not really widely discussed in that context. At SoundCloud, where I'm currently, we have a well-defined split career ladder. That means you have, like, for IC, individual contributor, a part where you can progress, and also for engineering manager where you're going to progress. It's public. There's a blog post around it. You can Google it. Exists for all roles, actually, engineering. It breaks down necessary skills that the person must demonstrate or on each individual level. It's also great for orientating toward which skill to work on. So, like, we do like these sessions. Like, as a manager, I lead these sessions where we kind of go through like these skill paths and kind of like look which areas people should improve on, what is actually their interest. We open the kind of this kind of spreadsheet and kind of discuss which step next to like person should take. And also, like, if somebody's doing something really great, like, we can take this accomplishment and attach them to one of these skills and say, hey, actually, this person is examining, like, showing like examples of skills or traits on a next level. But even with this, really, like, this is a classic, maybe like a career ladder, only a little bit well refined, I would say. It's not nothing like it's not nothing that's new. Like, if you like think Google Dropbox or Circle CI, maybe even the GitHub, they also have their public ladders, career ladders. But there's still a clear cut between you are now like some sort of a senior engineer, whatever that level is. Maybe it's like, oh, you're a senior engineer 3, 4, 5, and then you become something else. There is like a clear cut between switching to, let's say, staff engineer and software engineer, and like from software engineer to engineering manager. There's always this kind of separation. So knowing the ladder doesn't make it truly easier to kind of like make decision or make this jump in your career, or at least that's how I found it. And what's also unspoken secret in the industry, once you reach some level of seniority, it's completely up to you to drive your career further. For example, if a person joins as a junior, and after 3 years, that person in the company is still a junior engineer, alarms are ringing, people are asked, managers are being questioned. The person have maybe a personal development plan created for that. So a bunch of people will kind of like go and like, look, why is this person not progressing as it's kind of like averages? But once you reach the like seniority level, like, you can stay in that role for 10 years, nobody will blink the eye. And it's like, and it's all completely fine, 100% fine, but it's like, don't expect, if you're in the position where you're kind of moving from seniority, don't expect basically like a direct support from a company. Nobody will really look into it. I'm talking really on aggregate level. I'm not talking on personal. So if you are on this, so let's say that you are in this position that between like the seniority levels, and like you're maybe like even in the beginning of your career and kind of like eyeing both your spot. I always say the decision itself, where to go next, is not a hill to die on. And the things that I usually ask my colleagues when they are confused what to do kind of next in their careers, I ask them, like, can you actually envision taking the role temporarily? For instance, while I was on parental leave, I had like a colleague that she was part of my team, and she asked me like she would like to try to be an engineering manager. So I kind of set her up for a couple of months while I was out to actually take all the necessary kind of like meetings and stakeholder syncs and plannings and organizing, things that I was usually do as engineering manager. And after I came back, she basically told me, well, this is actually not for me. I actually don't enjoy it. This is horrible. I don't know how you do it. But it's also fine. We actually then kind of created a path for a staff engineer, and we kind of executed on that because we definitely knew she wants to move in some leadership role. We were just not sure where to go. So maybe like pitching it as a temporary solution is sometimes an option. I sometimes also, when people are kind of scared, like, oh, I'm not sure about like really diving myself into management. It's always, you can like don't think it's always needs to go forward. It can always go a pendulum, right? I know a bunch of successful engineers who actually were engineering managers in one moment. And actually, the fact that they were in a leadership role helps them to be a way better programmers right now. So think about it as a pendulum swing. Also, why not just work as a senior engineer? Like, why? It's just amazing work. You just work on like, you do what you really like. Don't feel pressured as like, especially LinkedIn and like this website that can celebrate the constant progress in the companies. I think like just being in that role is already really great. If you're working in a great team, don't get me wrong. And basically, the next question I usually ask, like, hey, like, can you actually work on the skills that can support you in both tracks? Because I believe that there is not a clear overlap. If I talk about leadership, you can talk about like a skills that can support you in both tracks. So wherever you're at your career, I believe that basically there are a couple of kind of like core principles that you can apply in practice to make you better in kind of like roles that are in front of you. This is what I'm saying, like I was truly not ready when I was put in a position to actually lead a team. I think I got the role because I was probably the most experienced around the project and I was kind of leading it, but actually I didn't have my skills that I was practicing before that, or I was preparing myself, were not the skills that I'm kind of talking about here right now. The skills that I'm going to talk tonight are a little bit not at all what I was thinking at that moment. Because I always believe I just need to be a really good engineer to make the next step. So just continue like reading papers, watch videos of other programmers talk, watch Twitch streams of other programmers code, participate as many pull request reviews as you might. But actually, that's all great. That makes you great engineers, but they are not setting stones for kind of like a next things that are down the line. And I would say like all these kind of things I kind of talk like availability, patience, empathy, writing are skills that kind of like that I kind of practiced and really helped me, I think, kind of improve myself as in these roles, in the roles that I took since then. So what I think about availability, basically moving from focused, isolated work more or less to way of working where you're more accessible is a little bit. It needs a little bit kind of like adjusting, right? I read like in some book basically about Japanese car manufacturers and how they kind of like revolutionized car industry, where basically like the car is built on a line, and whenever the kind of line stops, the person who is actually assembling the car has a problem, they can raise an alarm, and the manager basically doesn't come to scold or kind of like make a big fuss, actually like sits with the worker, kind of they try to solve the problem together. So I always kind of like thought about this kind of as being a manager as a service-oriented like role. You should be there for people that you're kind of managing, but you should also not be in their way. So this is like a delicate balance, how much also you want to impose yourself, because you also want to let people grow, and how much actually, but also they need to be free that they can actually basically ring the alarm and like summon you basically. Patience, like that's a huge one. The impact of my work is sometimes seen only after a few months. Like you start thinking about quarters, like instead of sprints, and also like, or you start thinking about sprints instead of pull requests. You get a like really nice dopamine hit when you like do a good pull request and people kind of like agree and you merge it and you ship it. You're not part of that anymore. Chances are you're not part of it anymore. You take the dopamine fix, the dopamine fix maybe like later down the line. And also you will witness sometimes that people you're working with, or I witness like sometimes people like they're maybe doing a slower work than you would kind of like do it if you were doing you being in their shoe. And that's also fine, just a growth, because it's a humbling experience, like working with people, especially in the beginning, like on the first steps of their career. You can see how hard it is. Like, there's so much stuff to learn. You just need to be patient about it. Like, I also believe that there's no really cut corners in organizations. Like if you cut corners, like especially management, it's like it's a recipe for disaster. So you really need to take it slow, like take it a notch compared to where you were like back. Empathy, like really like help me like putting myself in the shoes, makes me make decision wisely. I noticed a lot, like even when I was engineer, that like that you like in a retrospectives and whatnot, you never talk about the team is the problem. Always like the team is always good. The atmosphere in the team is always good. They are some other team that is making your dependency a hell, or they are like whatever the team that is giving you like requests. That team is actually problematic, and that's really, I think, a kind of like mental slip that I try to kind of correct in myself and try to correct my team in discussion is like there's no success day. The fact is like especially in SoundCloud, if one team is not successful, like if like we work as a team. Like even though we're separate teams, we work on the same project, the same product. So we need to move in some kind of unison, in some form or another. So if you start pointing fingers, it's a recipe for disaster. Luckily, SoundCloud is like really blameless culture, so this really rarely happens. But this is something really to think of. And also, like when you work on let's say in a company that exists for a long time, which is SoundCloud, like there is a code base that is really old. And I noticed that what I tried to correct myself was like stop thinking about this code is a legacy, somebody else wrote it. I believe it is like as soon as I open the code in a company that I work with, it's my code. It's already my code. Like accepting it as it's mine because I have code that I've written like 10 years ago, and probably somebody is now maintaining it and like pulling their hair out and thinking, what the hell is Goran doing here? So like I think this is like just thinking that whoever did the work actually did it in the best intentions possible is the better state of mind than actually thinking it other way around. Writing, this is like I would say one of the key skills. Like it really needs practice. Like making myself clear by writing helps me a lot, especially now in remote culture. I'm always proud of myself that I can actually like understand English really well. I always say like I watch Wire without like subtitles. But actually, that doesn't help me a lot when it comes to writing. It doesn't like if you want to get the message across to writing, it's a completely different skills. There's a lot of books, there's a lot of courses that person can take. But I personally found that actually writing consistently helps me a lot. And when like gave feedback recently about writing, and person will say, but I actually don't have anything to write. There's always something to write. Like usually Jira tickets are crap. Like just take a half an hour, like a week, or just take a 15 minutes every day. Just try to improve like what's actually being written there. Business or like this kind of business English, I don't know how to call it now differently. It's completely different than like casual English. So how to actually get across, make it on point, it's really a skill. And like also working with native speakers also help, like taking a look at how they write, how they compose, how they write. Just helps me a lot. But this can't be it. Like it can't be availability, patience, empathy, writing, and you're a good leader. Of course not. Like I think there are many more skills to make a good leader. And also, like, what does it actually mean? Like, there are no two same football players or basketball player on the same position. They play a role differently. So it really could like goes by the skills that people, and like you lean on your strengths and you work on your weaknesses. And maybe that's how I kind of like crafted this. And these are the things these are my kind of experiences. And I kind of like, I'm not 100% honest. It's not only these four things. For me, my secret sauce is SQL. Like if you are in like a software company that produce any data, SQL is the king. It rules, period. Like just like ability to do a data analysis, ability to kind of like examine under the hood what is going on. Everything that works like spits out some small data fragments. Being able to connect all of this actually helps me a lot in my work. Just like having an hour of session where I actually kind of analyze a lot of other stuff we are composed, like having access to data is also like really important. But like SQL is usually really deeply underrated. Yeah, I try to kind of like talk a lot of like my experiences, where I come from, but I really have like I really would like to come out of this session with a couple of really truly advices like that you can maybe apply. Like I'm not going to like, I don't know who you are, where you're coming from, what's your context, but there is all, I think these couple of things I seen as a kind of slip up for most engineers I talk to, and not only engineers, like even engineering managers or wherever you're in your career. And that's like being able to lean on your manager wherever you're in career. And that is like, think about, are you getting most of your manager? Most engineers I encountered had zero interest in what management is and how it operates. That's really, really, I think, interesting. Usually, like, they are not interested in, like, most engineers just like, okay, I'll just work on my work, I'll just improve my skill, I'm becoming a better programmer. But actually, like, there is like a complete, like, parallel, like, flow to what you're doing, that if you don't understand how is your even manager successfully, how you are successful in an organization, like, really puts your even position in jeopardy. Wherever you are, the only constant thing I'm pretty sure is a change. Like, there's always going to be some form of a change, and understanding at least how management operates in your organization helps you a lot to kind of like prepare yourself for whatever change is coming. Like, at least for manager, you should always provide your clear expectations. Like, if you're kind of building your career up, like, try to get the clear expectations possible. The most dangerous things are implicit expectations. So I actually didn't have like in my career, like, especially like looking back, like, I would go on one-on-ones that just had implicitly in my mind, kind of, hey, as a senior engineer, I should be doing and focusing on these things. And I would never actually like surface them. I actually believe this is dangerous now. You should air it all out. Tell it as it is, like, tell what you actually expect from this role and what you don't expect. What I usually kind of run when I start like managing like a team, I do like a session one-on-one with everybody in the team, where I basically like ask people before the session to actually tell me the 3 things they expect from me and 3 things they don't expect from me. For instance, and I prepare them the same thing, right? For instance, I don't expect that anybody works overtime. We're working overtime, you need to raise me a hand. Like, if you're like, especially in our remote culture, I don't want to hear overtime. You need to have a clear kind of like life work balance. So if we are working overtime, that means that we are not planning. That means that I'm not doing really right job in actually taking from the stakeholders. That means like there's like a lot of things that are wrong, right? But also, like, I think I always say, like, I expect to tell me where you want to go. I can't read mind. If I could read mind, I would probably be in Las Vegas or blackjack table, like, simple as that. But you need to tell me where you want to go, and like, we need to kind of like in conversation kind of reach like how actually I can support you. Because again, coming back to this service-oriented mindset, at least that's how I play this role, and I find that that's the best way to keep like some level of happiness in work. I mentioned like the touch-based productive one-on-ones, our conversation helping advance your careers. Do you bring the topics to discussion? I think this is like a thing that I did a lot in the past. Is actually I would be passive on one-on-ones. I would just like, there is a slot, the manager put this slot, and she wants to see how I'm doing. Let's just show my face and kind of like talk a little bit about work. But actually, like, even when I had like issues with like, hey, I'm not really satisfied with my work I'm currently doing, or I'm not satisfied with my salary or compensation, I didn't know how to bring these topics up. And some of these topics are really, really tricky and not easy to talk about. And I like, especially like when in the beginning of a career, I would really wait till the end where I couldn't, like, let's say that work was so unbearable, like I couldn't kind of handle it and just leave. This is a thing that I kind of completely changed. Like, if you say immediately that what's bothering you, it really helps the manager also know where to take next. Well, yeah, and like I always ask people, does manager actually values you? If your manager doesn't think you're performing well, reaching the next step in your career will be hard. And that's why I say, like, understanding how management works, understanding what makes your manager tick, is also a thing that you should be aware in the back of your head if you're working in an organization. There is like a thin line between optimizing for your personal growth and optimizing for satisfying your manager, because that's a thin line that you need to kind of like see, because like satisfying your manager and maybe like you might be satisfying the like not great parts of our organization in general. Like you're trying maybe like you're trying just to pump out more features, and you're kind of trying to like look that your manager looks good that you pump out, but maybe the question you should be asking, should we actually be doing these features at all? So that's a really thin line how actually to go about it. But it's clear if your manager, from in my experience, if your manager doesn't see the value going around, that it will be really, really hard for any step in your career. So that's why I said air it all out, talk it out. I worked also in organizations that are smaller, like they didn't have a letters, they didn't have such a rigid structure. And I didn't I didn't recognize that in the past, but I actually would take some kind of smaller leadership roles. But I didn't, like I said, I never was like I never like look at this as kind of like as a sign that I can actually be a leader. I just like saw some issues and I just jump on it. But I see more and more, or I gave a couple of advices to my friends, is like, if there is a necessity for a leadership role, try to pitch it. Just try to write it as kind of like promotional package that you would kind of like to get, and pitch it to your kind of like whatever, however the flat organization is. The organization is just idea constructs, and they can always be challenged. Even the really rigid one, like I don't know, the big fives, they can always be challenged. There is always wiggle room, but especially in smaller organizations. Yeah, maybe you're seeing some things that you want to improve. I talked a little bit now. This similar mentality that if you have like an itch that you want to fix with coding, like in a small organization that might work as well, or even in a bigger organization. That's a really like nice way to kind of like progress. If you're seeing some small thing and you can carve out a day and you actually can work on something and improve it, like that can impact wider group or teams, that's pretty great. Just make sure that your work is in the end visible. Celebrate success and use it to pitch for a role change. Don't get sucked into doing the work and like expecting somebody kind of like will just tap you on the shoulder. Like you need to kind of like you need to drive yourself. Remember what I noticed a lot is this thing, like if you are stuck in a seniority role, you really need to kind of jump. You really need to jumpstart. What I recommended a couple of times is writing a brag document. That actually worked good as a promotional kind of tool. Brag document is like your accomplishment in a year or 6 months, just like what you achieved, like connecting the dots, like not only like I implemented X and Y, but I implemented X and Y, and that brought like this amount of revenue or this amount of new users or this amount of engagement. This is, I think, a really good thing, like to kind of like also put your kind of career in perspective. Like all of this, what I'm talking is like, it's also fine and dandy now, but I truly sucked at the beginning. Like I need to kind of say this, and it's really hard to admit when you're really good. Like I believe I'm really good at the role I was doing, and then you're all of a sudden kind of like out of your depth. It feels like the problems are the problems themselves are hard, but actually no, you're just not good. So this is similar like skiing, like for example, like it's not this, when you start skiing, it's not the skiing is hard, you just don't know how to do it. And 20 or something years of education where you're actually punished for not knowing a thing and not being able to express that you're actually not good at something, really like programs your brain how to actually attack this. So that's why I'm kind of like now a little bit more direct, like do this, do that. But actually, I'm not on a white horse right now. I truly sucked at the beginning. And having somebody to talk actually made a huge difference for me. I was approaching the people in a company I admired. And what I really found out quickly, I don't actually need advice. I need opportunity and visibility. Actually, advice is like an idea. I have them. I can speak out advices. What is actually hard is to get from somebody opportunity and visibility. That's really hard. If you can get that will help me out for me. Stronger personal relationship, like I never built a friendship based on somebody's role in industry, but somehow I ended up with the friends who are passionate about the same things, and I actually they helped me really a lot, like just to keep me in check where I'm at, to kind of play a devil advocate, like to kind of like escape the maybe like echo chamber that you might get from like that I get from, let's say, family, like that kind of like just they just challenge me, my friends. So I really kind of blessed that I have like a circle of friends that I can actually lean on. Books helped a lot. Problems like that I discussed like are kind of like widely problems that talk are widely discussed. So this kind of like step between IC management and staff engineering, I kind of recommend these two books. The one is Bill Larson, staff engineer, and the other one is Camille Fournier, the manager spot. So for if you're going to manager spot, you read the manager spot. The staff engineer is really good. It has like a bunch of interviews at the end about a bunch of staff engineers and principal architects and stuff like that, kind of like how they started. Really humbling book as well. I recommend the manager spot to everybody who is in software industry. The first chapter is just amazing. It just explains what you should get from your manager, what you should get, how you should challenge your manager. So I highly recommend this to anybody who is kind of like the software industry. There is always internet. I'm not really great at it, about this kind of like connecting and like reaching out to people. And if you Google me, like I don't have a huge footprint in software engineering at all. But anytime I actually reached out, I was really surprised about the feedback I got and the support. So if this is your thing, then maybe that's your thing. I'm going to like a couple of frequently asked questions I'm getting like from my friends, and then those are like, do you code at all? Well, right now, no. And even if, even when I was engineering manager, I tend to stay away from critical part. That means I would take maybe bugs, or like I would take like things that are not time dependent, because my calendar is completely different than like a programmer's calendar. It's like connected to this accessibility that I was talking about. So I spend a lot of time reading code, but actually coding not so much. Do you have a lot of meetings? Hell yeah, I have a lot of meetings. Like I said, my calendar looks like all over the place. I am becoming better and better at this. Actually, like thinking about which meetings are truly important. Where do I go just to agree with somebody and kind of nod my head, or where I actually go to raise some questions and like try to kind of shed a light in like dark pathways of decision making. So I always tell to, like in my team, I try to kind of like repeat this mantra: if you are not contributing to the meeting and you think the meeting is boring, feel free to leave. It's one thing to say, actually, like it's hard to practice, but yeah. How do you know that you're good at your job? Like it's more of a question, like so like when you're a programmer, you kind of do your pull request and you get like people kind of give you tips and tricks how to become better. You kind of like you see yourself growing as an engineer. But these days, like I don't have this, right? It's really like kind of there are no really clear guidelines guidelines, yeah, from time to time. So these days I'm measuring success is mostly like how much I can be delegated or replaced, to say. If I go for 2 weeks on vacation, will the work stop? Can people make decisions without me? Have I empowered the people to actually do it, the job alone? Is there like information like accessible, or is it only trapped in my head? So this thing is kind of like my kind of like internal KPIs that I'm. So yeah, I hope I kind of like didn't rush this thing. Like I hope like it was. I hope you find something interesting. I'm kind of open for Q&A. I'm kind of really excited about that. So yeah, I'm kind of like finished with my slides.
Thank you, Goran. We have some questions that came through. Miloš Katinsky asks you, how do you handle feedback in the team? Are people open in giving, receiving it?
Yeah, we have like we are currently in the team in SoundCloud. We have a lot of emphasis on the feedback. So we are trying to give immediate feedback. Okay, let's put this like that. So there is a feedback that I need to give somebody immediately if I see that there is a course correction, or like somebody's late to the meetings, not showing up at work at time. Very rarely happens, but let's say that happens. I need to kind of jump on it and give feedback immediately. I'm also expecting feedback from everybody on one-on-ones, and I'm kind of trying to kind of like I try to kind of empower people to kind of like do this. And there is also like just kind of like there's immediate feedback, but there is also feedback that I can wait for. I can actually wait for one-on-one and say, actually, in that situation, that could have went better. It's again about this thing that I was talking about, giving opportunity rather than advice. So I would say, like, let's say you kind of like mishandle this thing, but there is a next opportunity lined up. You might go and take it. One-on-one is sometimes really hard to get feedback. I learned this week, I tried this week a really interesting sentence that really is on one-on-ones that I'm trying is, and I got really interesting results, so I want to share it right now, is what is the one thing you want to change? If there is a one thing to change in your team, what would that be? And it's interesting how actually wrapped in that question, you get the feedback for yourself. And like you get the feedback about something else. We also have like a 2 times a year official feedback cycle, which is mostly wrapped in the performance review. And the third thing that I'll stop talking is like you can actually request the feedback from anybody in your company, like to the tool that we have, you can actually request, and it's really, really good tool to get like build a promotional package. You ask, like you collaborated with somebody more senior in other team, you ask feedback, and yeah, hope I answer.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question coming. Andreas, how does the usual day of principal engineer at SoundCloud differ from yours? Do they still code?
I would need to ask Jorge about it. I don't think Jorge codes that much anymore. I'm not throwing the name on the device. The role is like inside of a SoundCloud. I can take an example of a couple of principal engineers. We have something called like collectives, which are kind of like a horizontal organization parallel to like a team structure. So we have a backend collective, and they are really invested a lot of time inside of like a, let's say, our framework for building services. They are making sure that the knowledge is really widespread, that people are kind of growing as well as engineers, but also like making sure that like that the work is progressing properly on these projects, making sure that they innovate on this project. So it's a lot about also ideation, a lot about what is called like what we like sometimes call cat herding, getting like the right people in the group. I would believe that they actually like they are still coding way less than they are not coding inside of the teams, that's for sure. And I think they are working on like some kind of parallel threads. I would say that they're also like on meetings calendar to an extent.
Okay, thank you. Hal Taylor asked next thing. You talked about the brag document, and your example was about building things that impacted users. As leadership becomes less directly tied to building things and the impact is more abstract, what kind of things might appear in your brag document? This is very interesting.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, like one of these, like with my brag document currently, I'm focusing on so like I'm a director of engineering of revenue. So that means that my kind of KPIs are connected to like a revenue driving topics. So for instance, in mine is like how many initiatives I actually was able to kind of like set up from ideation to actually like actual value that we brought in a year. So it's really easy for me because it's like I can actually apply money value. So actually how much money we made, simple as that. The next thing is actually hiring, like how much actually I participate in hiring. The third thing is actually as well onboarding. And then also there are kind of like organizational stuff. Like for instance, I recently worked on organization strategy about changing how we onboard engineering managers. So that's the thing that I would put, let's say, in my brand document. I like helped and executed the organizational strategy for onboarding engineering managers, and we onboarded like 7 engineering managers, and we got the feedback that is like good or bad. Like I would even ask people for feedback for that. So like I always, even if I would let brag at me, I would always connect action to actually result, whatever the result is, right? Like, is it, if you're working on like backend team, like it's maybe like cutting down what's your 99 percentile of request time or whatever. For me, it's a little bit easier. I can just connect money, which is always nice to communicate, and then I can also connect like a wider organizational teams.
Okay, thanks. I have one question. Do you use OKRs and SoundCloud, or if not, do you use other methodology? So
we are using OKRs. We are using OKRs. We have a company-wide OKRs that kind of trickle down. Then we have team-level OKRs. We started doing this 2020. Yeah, we are pretty like, I think this is like 4 to 50 iteration. So
okay.
I would say we are kind of new on this as well.
Okay, thanks. Miloš Savic is asking, tech lead versus engineering manager. What are these things, how they are different, and how should one choose?
Yeah, so I highly recommend Staff Engineering, the book, because like you will read there also like the tech lead, how it's actually separated in multiple roles. And if I would now try to go for my head, I would probably miss it. So like, first of all, that's an advice from top of my head. Like now, like just go do that book, and I think it'll help you a lot. Let me tell you mine. If you are want to try or passionate about people growth, and you are willing to kind of like step back and actually help others grow as engineers around you, I think that's the engineering manager part. Like if you're interested in like trying a soft leadership skills through building your kind of like without actually direct management, that's like a technical leadership part. I read somewhere like the technical leader is like engineering manager, but that person never needs to tell another person that they will not get a salary bump and they will not get a promotion, because they never have like a direct responsibilities. They have just soft leadership. That's why I said these 4 things that I was kind of mentioning. I think you should start thinking about as a kind of leadership roles, and you should try to build like your skills as a leadership roles. You know, like I tried my best to grow in that part just by working on my technical skills, and that led me nowhere. That led me like being in a senior engineering role for a long time. And it's not that I was not happy, I was just expecting sometimes somebody will tap me on the shoulder and tell me you're now technically. That never happened. And what happened, actually, I got to be engineering manager, like I said, by pure luck, and actually liked it. But think about it, how to go about it, think about it as a like completely as a leadership role in building skills, and read the Staff Engineering book. I highly recommend.
Thanks. Irfan is asking, what do you love about your job and what do you dislike about your job?
I hate calendar. I hate that I don't have a focus time, but I'm improving. Like this year, I'm way better. But like I had like days that were really, really tough when I didn't know how to fight off, like being like on the meetings and kind of pulled into discussions, and then actually being expected to create some artifacts is really hard. So that's a kind of like a noob mistake that you make. What I like about my job is like I'm kind of like really blessed that I witnessed some people like grow their careers, and I was somehow took a small part into that. It's really great. Then also the fact that you can influence and change the path of a company sooner rather than later. So you can stop some ideas that I think were not good. You can kind of like give your feedback sooner rather than you actually like the work get materialized to like to your kind of actually to code. Like then to push back is a little bit harder. So kind of like being part of kind of like decision-making process about product is also really interesting to me.
Okay, thank you. We have one anonymous attendee who is asking, are there plans for improving SoundCloud's recommendation feature?
Are there plans about improving the SoundCloud recommendations features? Is that the question?
Yes.
I think it's really good. I think we just need to like build the machine a little bit up. I love the recommendation. No, like joking aside, there is like a recommendation search team that is working actively on it always. So yeah, I'm not part of their roadmap.
Okay. We have another anonymous attendee who actually commented that you're awesome with a heart. So this is not a question, but just a remark. Thank you. Milica Mihaili is asking, as an empathetic manager, how well do you hold your boundaries? Any advice on how not to take other people's problems home? Say your reports are emotionally struggling due to work-related problems that you cannot solve. What do you do?
It's a hard. Hi, Milica. I know who's writing this. This one is hard. Today was hard, for instance. I have people who are from Russia and Ukraine. It's hard. So I had like a manager who told me once, like, I'm your not best friend. Like on this, like kind of like what you expect, what you don't expect, kind of like on that, like I'm not your best friend and don't call me to like move your furniture. I always find it really rude. I know what he was aiming at. It's really hard to pull boundaries along these things, and the only thing I can say, it gets easier a little bit with time. That's all I can say. You kind of know how to cope with it, and you know how to where to kind of like it really depends how much you want to take. I don't have really good advice. I'm not really excellent to it. I think I take a lot, and I'm actually don't mind it, and it's not influencing my personal life. But there are days that are bad, like today.
Yeah, I understand. Nebojša Manojlović is asking, hi Goran, thank you. I mean, he's telling, hi Goran, thank you for a really great presentation. And he's asking, do you miss writing code? Or to put it more precisely, do you miss solving more complex or architectural type of coding problems?
Those are two things for me. Writing code, I do miss. I was writing this Christmas break. I was writing some my service, like I was helping something with my brother, which took over completely disconnected, and I was writing Scala. I was like, oh man, this is so fun. This is so fun. So yeah, I kind of do miss writing code. Solving architectural technical challenges, I'm still deep into that. Like I still sit with the engineers. I still, sometimes I just on a final stage of decision making these days, but sometimes I actually, if the product is still kind of unsure where they want to go, and there are clear limitations of our architecture, I sit down and I'm a kind of liaison between two. Like I try to kind of like stitch together like kind of like ideas from product and engineering. And for that, I really need to keep in my mind. I still read about software architecture patterns and still try to improve on that. Which is also great that like when you hire really great people, you learn a lot from them. Like engineers I work with that in my team, they're smarter than me in this area. So I learned a lot the last couple of years. Like I improved. Like there's a notion that you don't progress your technical career as an engineer manager. I think that's bullshit. If you want, like again, coming back to it, depends how you want to play the role. There are no two point guard shooters in NBA the same. So it's the same thing. Like you can play the role how you want. I play it on a little bit in technical side. You understand?
Okay, we have a few more questions. Jude is asking, meeting versus emails.
I read somewhere like this meeting should have been an email. Guess what? It was an email. Nobody answered. Now it's a meeting. So yeah, I try to. Emails are for me horrible, but Google Docs versus emails, Miro boards versus emails are really good. So Google Docs are for me like a game changer. Like honestly, just ability to send somebody and ask them for feedback. They can leave the comments. They kind of like set expectations. Say, hey, we are going to have a meeting after this document, whatever it is agreed upon, and after the meet, like after the comments are all closed down. That's the tactics that I kind of don't go on a meeting without. Like I try to not go on a meeting without artifact already ready and everybody read it. That's something I try to improve. Or not trying to improve. That's something I try to do. But yeah, it's worst of this is like a Slack messages. Like there is like I have like a bunch of notifications. That's a hard one to like. When do you stop slacking and actually jump on a Hangout or Zoom or whatever? It's also delicate balance. You also don't want to like force people to kind of meet if they feel that they are making. But sometimes you need to recognize that there is decision is not being made, and you need to kind of like pull the trigger and say, like, okay, like, let's get together.
Yeah, it's difficult when we are online and we cannot just tap on the shoulder someone who is just next to us and like let's have a talk. Okay, next question from Ksenia. How do you discipline yourself to keep up with your personal OKRs? That is, how do you keep up with set goals in the midst of the day-to-day tasks? Do you feel bad if you heavily fail at your OKRs for a given period?
Can you like, is this a personal OKRs or is this team OKRs? Like
a personal OKRs.
We don't have a personal OKRs in SoundCloud, but I get what you mean. In SoundCloud, we have like 20% of our time should be dedicated to self-allocated time, which we call SAT. So that goes in all engineering organization. As a manager, I basically never fully utilize this 20%, which is kind of like tells you a lot about how you kind of stop a little bit the guilt of it, like, there's always work. Although all my engineers do practice SAT, like I really try to kind of drill this in the head. You should use your SAT. It's really important. Like these days, what I do is basically, I was mentioning this in the writing, and I wanted to say it. Once in one moment, you actually need to stop, especially with the writing, you need to stop relying on your mind. You need to start somewhere write your thoughts. And I tried different tools, like I tried to kind of write in the docs. I tried to write in the end, I just use a simple notebook, like it follows me all around. And like at the end of the week, I basically write what went really good, what went really bad. And then beginning of the week, at the end of the week, I basically start creating things I really want to work on next week. And I always include something on my side, like something that will help me, or not me, but like something that will, some curiosities that are not connected to the work itself, if that makes sense. Sometimes it can be like, hey, how is recommendation team doing the recommendations, like for instance, or how is, like, and then I go and kind of like try to read, ask people around, kind of try to build the knowledge. So that helps me a lot. Like when I know that I will have it, I sometimes even book the slots in my calendar, just focus time on these things. And like luckily in SoundCloud, people are usually really respectful about kind of this kind of blocks. And people are generally respectful about your calendar. So that's, I don't have a personal OKRs that are kind of like transposed to that.
Okay, thanks. So you actually use only team OKRs. You have company objectives, or you have company OKRs?
We have a company, group, and team. So that's how like you kind of trick us. Like it has a company OKRs, group OKRs, team OKRs. And then we have a personal development plan. That's a little bit different. That's like, hey, this is what I would like to develop. Well, I consider this work. So for that, it's a little bit different. Like even maybe like I never do personal care. That would be a work. So like schedule the time. So think about it like you need to do it. Like, yeah, like and then you need to like I think one of CTOs like was telling me, you're a manager, you should know how to manage your time.
Okay, yeah, interesting. One more question regarding OKRs. Predrag is asking, are your managers aware of them and actively involved in reaching them, or are OKRs defined and discussed just on the management level?
No, everybody's aware. The team is aware of the team does a feedback loop as well to them. We do a couple of rounds. We did now this in January. We have like a company's OKRs. Then I worked on a group and a team level. So I kind of sat down with on team level and transpose something from group, and I get really great feedback from engineers telling like, hey, actually, we can actually challenge this a little bit or switch the order or kind of like do this instead. Work on a little bit on our like technical, decreasing our technical debt and working with technical excellence as OKR do that this year. Really like help the team a lot. And also like my managers are involved, my project managers are involved into that. So it's discussed topic.
Okay, next question. For people new to management role, carrying people management responsibility, what kind of support for them is the most needed? How much to rely on HR, more experienced peers, line managers, coach, other?
This is the thing I touched in a talk is I think the best thing is like building your network inside. If you're in some organization where you are building a network of people you can like talk to and kind of like share your experiences. Otherwise, it's a pretty lonely job in a sense, like you don't pair like in coding, like let's pair together and solve this tough problem. There is like you can't pair on like a performance review. Like it's really hard. So really building a network. Also like building a network, also discussing it with your line manager is extremely important. That's why I also kind of like mentioned. And then yeah, I wanted to say like in SoundCloud, we do a lot of this. We have like engineering manager things in a smaller groups, and those really help me a lot. Like people are just discussing like, hey, I have this issue, or they don't share kind of like personal details, but they kind of, I'm struggling with too many performance reviews to write this year. How should I approach it? Stuff like that, like trying to kind of like tips and tricks how to kind of, otherwise it's really lonely.
Yeah. Thank you. Next question, Marco is asking, during the recruitment process, what do you look for in candidates except technical skills?
Depending on the position that they're applying. Okay, so like not to go too deep into recruitment process, like I'm just going to run through it. Like let's say we try to find, like I know it's like it sounds like cheesy, but we're truly trying to find somebody who matches the SoundCloud values, which are kind of also like public, and you can take a look at those. That's really important for us. On a technical, so that's kind of like general. On technical track, let's say probably it's most interesting. We are doing kind of like a blind interview, like blind interview starts kind of like in a blind process, meaning you submit your code challenge and we don't look at your CV and we don't know who you are until the challenge is completely reviewed. We are kind of really strong about fighting the biases in the process. And then basically like usual technical skills, which can be whatever the language you are, collaboration, like try to like see where you're kind of like on like engineering maturity level that you are, how well you can kind of collaborate with other team members, the project managers, how you approach diversity, how you approach resilience, how you approach conflict resolutions. Those are kind of usual questions that are across the board. I would say that there is maybe even a blog post about that as well. I can't say this for a fact, but I think there is also like a really nicely written this. If not, I think there is the existing, like for a specific role, like not to go like, because we hire a lot of different roles, so it really depends.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? We are still here for some time, a few minutes. So if you want to ask something, also if you want to ask something live, just raise a hand and I can turn on your mic so you can ask the question yourself. If not, we can wrap it up. Oh, no, we have questions. Okay, thank you. Anonymous question. Beside money, how do you motivate people from your team?
It like, I don't really mind, but that's why I said you need to tell me. People are different. Like some people really want to take more, they want to do a cross, they want to, let's say, they are happy to work in a company that enables them move inside of, like we have a level of fluidity. For instance, like there are Android engineers who join the SoundCloud as Android engineers. They're now in my team as a backend engineers. I have some backend engineers transferring like mobile engineers and web engineers. So there is this thing that kind of like engaged, like people find engaging. So it really depends from person to person. And that's why I say like really talk to them what did they motivate. Sometimes it is money. And that's good to know. Sometimes like, hey, I actually need like a salary bump this like at least this year to happen. Like, can we talk about it? It's the best thing that somebody can tell me. I actually need this. Whereas like I kind of like think about it like we do have a salary review process. We kind of look into it, but sometimes like really actually do want money. That's not bad thing to say. But like I said, like people are really different. Like we have this SAT, some people really enjoy this, having 20%, like every Friday, you work on whatever you want. It's really, like, also we have a lot of users and impacting those, like it's really like people like that. Problems are tough. That's also something. But I personally, like I said, like you need to tell me what makes you click.
Okay, makes sense. What do you think about 4-day work week?
Like the best thing ever. No, I'm kidding. Like I will. In Germany, laws are pretty like flexible about it. So actually, we in SoundCloud we allow people to take 4 days work week. It's like by law. You cannot reject anybody. Whoever wants to take a 4 days work week, they're happy. In my team, I have right now, my group, my team, we have 2 or 3 people that are on for it, like at least 2.
Do they get to choose what days do they work on? So, or is it like Friday off?
Yeah, we agree on this. We like, I think like some people taking Monday, like no, 4 people, like some people taking Monday, some people taking Friday.
Okay, that's interesting.
It is like we as a team sit down and say like, hey, actually, what works the best? Can we make I personally think I'm, like I said, like a pretty proponent of work-life balance. I think if you want to go that route, that's an option. It should be an option everywhere, I would say.
Yep. What do you advise regarding job descriptions that do not seem confusing? For example, SRE versus DevOps.
I never was part of writing the job descriptions on that level. Luckily, like we in the SoundCloud basically get kind of a template that we fill in the previous companies. It was also like source like this is like I know what you mean. It's like it's just like what to put there. It really depends on the market or like what you actually try to achieve. I need to punt on this. I don't have a good I don't have a good advice. I don't want to like speedball something that doesn't make sense. I don't have advice.
Okay, another question. Do you lean towards remote versus hybrid for your team?
We are currently like, we are hybrid. So some people are in the office, some people are at home. People are slowly coming back to the office. Our office looks great. We're not using it. it depends. Like some people like it really. Some people have conditions where actually they can work really nicely from home. Some people like they only work from living room, and like it's not great for them, and like they want to go back to the office. Right now we are hybrid, but I think all meetings are still like projected to Zoom or Hangout. I think we're slowly going to go back. I think that we will never go fully back to the office. I think the idea is the team decides how many days they actually need per week in sprint to maybe meet if they want. It's going to be left on the teams to decide. With some kind of minimum like currently being discussed. But like we're never going back. Like there's no right now there is no plan to go to the office for.
Okay. Do you have any more questions? And what do you prefer? Do you go to the office or do you work from home?
I work from home. I really like remote. I work from home just like that.
Okay.
I'm meeting colleagues for lunch, but then come back to work from home.
Oh, right. So you are meeting for lunch and you are going back. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, like the office is, I don't know, 20 minutes from my place, and then some people are in the office, then we meet for lunch and then just take a lunch break together and then come back if you want to socialize, if you really want to see people. I mean, that's my approach. Some people are like depends.
Is lunch break also at 12 until 1? It's like in Switzerland?
No, it's like German law says like 1 hour, and like you need to take 1 hour break. So it depends. Like
Okay.
30, like usually between people take it somewhere between 12 and 1:30. That range.
Okay. 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 If we don't have any more questions, it's just I'm just waiting to see. Awesome talk. Okay, we can wrap it up now. Andros says awesome talk. Thank you a lot. Goran, thank you very much for this interesting talk. And everybody else, thank you for joining and thank you for your questions. Thank you for actively participating in this talk. I will comment. I will post links to our newsletters if you want to subscribe. We have one Serbian and English newsletter, so you can follow our next webinars because we're planning some really interesting talks. Goran, hope to see you, I don't know, maybe in future here in Serbia, also in Belgrade live on a, I don't know, meetup or somewhere.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure to sit down a little bit, think about this thing, like do a little bit retrospective. I hope somebody, like people find something, that listeners found something interesting, something they can apply. Reach out to me. I'm probably the only Goran Ojkić in the world, so you can find me on SoundCloud, but you can find me also on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Anything that you don't agree with me, I would really like to hear. Like anything that I can improve. We really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you, Goran. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening and see you next month. Bye-bye. Ciao.